have an extraordinary conversation in front of us. Two people, one of whom is not new to the Signal stage, and one of whom is new. Uh, we want to welcome Evan Spiegel, the co-founder and CEO of Snap, along with Jeremi Gorman, the Chief Business Officer. Welcome to you both.
Thank you for having us.
Yeah, absolutely. Hey, Evan, how are you doing? Evan looks like he's still dialing in. Well, we'll get started. We'll get started with you, Jeremi. It looks like Evan is still making sure everything is tied together. Jeremi, you joined Snap in 2018 after 20 years in the digital ad sales world. And a lot of people only know Snapchat really as an app that their teenagers love. Tell us a little bit more about what's going on now at Snap.
Absolutely. So definitely teenagers love Snap. There's no question about that. I think any of you with teenagers would certainly be able to attest to that, but it's not just teenagers. So we're really pleased with our broader audience. So for instance, we reach 90% of 13 to 24-year-olds in the US and 75% of 13 to 34-year-olds in the US. So not just for teenagers, but yes, most certainly the teenagers really love it. And I think that's one of the things that's so great. It gives them a forum by which they can communicate with their closest friends.
And Evan, if we've got you, I'm curious, it's been 5 years since you were on the Signal stage, and I think it's always interesting to check back in with folks who came during an early part of the company's history, and now it's been 5 years. You guys have been through a lot, and I want to get into some of that. But I'm remembering 5 years ago, you told us, even then, some impressive numbers. You had 100 million active users back then. And you were just launching this little new, tab on the app called Discover, which has become a very important part of your service. Tell us a little bit about how things stand now. How many folks are on the platform, and what's changed and what stayed the same?
Hey, John. Well, I'm grateful to be here and very grateful to be off of mute. So thank you for having me. Yeah, certainly a ton has changed. And one of the things that's been so fabulous, actually, is the way that P&G has helped us evolve our business. I mean, I remember the early meetings with the senior team and them saying, just, hey, let us help you learn how to build a business. We've done this a lot before. We know how to tell stories, and we'd love to share with you. So it's been a great partnership over the years, and certainly helped us drive a lot of growth. So today, as of our last earnings call, I think we shared over 200 million daily active users, so more than double since the last time I was here. But certainly the product has evolved a ton. One of the things we're most excited about is the progress we're making in augmented reality. We have an amazing augmented reality platform now where over 1 million lenses have been created by our community, and people are using that every day. So what's been really exciting is, maybe since the last time we spoke here, of course, our content business has grown a lot, but we've also developed this new platform around augmented reality that's seeing a ton of engagement. And so to see augmented reality hit the mainstream has been a really fun adventure over the last 5 years.
Yeah, it was really more of an idea that was somewhere in the future 5 years ago, and now it seems to be the daily practice, certainly in the behaviors of younger people. Are you seeing those kinds of behaviors moving kind of up into older groups of people on the platform?
Yeah, certainly. So one of the things that's really exciting about Snapchat is because it's based on your real friendships, people stick around and they use the product for a really long time. So if you use the product for a year, your retention rate over the next 5 years is 95% on an annualized basis. So what we see is that as new young people sign up for our service, they stick around and use it as they get older because their friends are really important to them. So certainly, we're seeing the platform age up, and it's definitely aged up since we started the business. I think I was about 20 when we got started, and just turned 30, and we're still going strong. So it's been really fun to grow alongside our community.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, Jeremi.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, there's the aging up right there.
Jeremi, it's hiring me. It worked.
I'm curious, we've had conversations with Susan previously, with Emmett at Twitch, and brand safety has come up in both of those conversations. It's so vital to brands to be in an environment that's safe. How do you approach that issue on Snap? And there seems to me, my understanding of the platform is it's got some distinct characteristics which might make it different as it relates to that issue.
Yeah, you're exactly right. So thank you for pointing that out. So Snapchat is a closed platform. So the Discover section that Evan just mentioned is a hand curated content platform, not dissimilar to a TV network where Snap chooses which partners run in that section. We have amazing original content that gets upwards of 25 million views a show or more. And then we also have partner content with the likes of the NFL, NBC, Viacom, BuzzFeed, and more. And that's a hand curated platform. So brand safety is really critical to us. But I think the most important thing to note between the differences between some of the platforms is that there is no open town square on Snapchat at all. You can't just post to our entire community if you want to. And that's the hand curated part. But this has been the way since by design. And actually, I should let Evan talk about this since he designed it. But here we are. So the has been this way by design, where there are no comments, no public comments, there are no likes, there is not a notion really of virality insofar as one would want to even produce the type of content that we see that brands don't want to be around, because there's no notion of it going viral. So we actually don't even really, we don't consider ourselves social media at all, because of that. It's really a place to communicate with your close friends. And some of the things are really fun when you see trends. Like if you were to ask a college student, they say text me to each other, they are talking about Snapchat. They are not talking about their phones. And so it's a very safe platform. P&G has very much led the way in helping us determine where brands should run. And we are so appreciative of that continued partnership.
Thank you, Jeremy. Evan, I want to ask you about something. One of the core themes that we've heard over the past day and a half has been about resilience, has been about managing through difficult or turbulent or uncertain times. And I'm sure, just as with everyone, you've had to take thousands of employees virtual and go through that process. But I'm actually interested in something that happened several years ago at Snapchat. After you came to Signal, you were kind of a hot breakout new platform, so much so that it attracted the attention of a major competitor who launched I guess you could call it a clone of your service. And I would say in 2018, it was fair to summarize the press coverage of Snap as "you're over." It's done. And in fact, the growth on the platform did plateau for a little bit there, and there were some concerns. How did you manage through that? And tell me the story of how you came roaring back.
Well, I think key to all this has been positivity and really supporting our different team members and reaching for this vision that we have of empowering people to express themselves. We're in an incredibly competitive industry, and that's actually the fun part. But I think the important thing is to make sure that you keep that positive momentum, you stay in close contact with your community and learn from them, because if you can help support your community and empower their behaviors and their desires, you can really drive a lot of growth. So we combine that with our willingness to make these really big long-term bets. You mentioned some of the growth that plateaued in 2018. That was really because we took a big risk and we did this redesign that we thought was the best thing for our community. We separated out content from your close friends and family, from content that was made by publishers or professionals or celebrities. And we did that really to emphasize the importance of your connections with your real friends, because we really thought that was a way to differentiate our business and also make a positive impact. And so that change was disruptive, and we were worried that it would be, and we told people that it would be. But you're right that I think those sorts of changes are difficult, and they were really difficult as a newly public company. At the time we were also transitioning our advertising business, so we went from this direct sold advertising business to an auction platform that brought pricing down more than 90%. So we brought pricing down on our ad products more than 90%. We were trying to continue to grow revenue and transitioning the product itself and the leadership team. And so doing all of that as a newly public company was extremely challenging. But I think what's so cool is that our team loves a good challenge. That's something that actually energizes them. And so to see our team really work together and support one another to drive the success of the business and serve our community, frankly, really brought us close together. And so, as you mentioned, now that we're going through this really challenging and disruptive time, our team has built that resilience. They've built that, ability to support one another through these challenging times. And so, I've really seen our team just rise to the challenge and continue their work to support our community.
Jeremi, given the times that we're in, a standard question that I usually ask in normal times is, how do marketers work with you? What are the big mistakes they make? What are the things you wish they understood? And I want you to answer that question. But in the light of this social media boycott and your brand safety comments earlier, I'm curious, how has the conversation changed with your major partners?
I think that's a great question. And I think it's been this really amazing opportunity for us to have true, deep dialogue with the most senior marketers in the world. There was a reason to call them. There was a reason to explain how we're different, not dissimilar to what I shared just now with you in the audience about there not being a town square. And one of the complex things about our team's job is that oftentimes the CEO levels aren't using Snapchat. So when we get the opportunity to speak with them, explain the differences, the fact that there aren't comments, which I know people don't want to be adjacent to, and so on, we've really had some meaningful dialogue. I'm very pleased to say that for the most part, those conversations have gone extremely well. Once people do understand the differences between what we're doing, they recognize that this is a brand safe, hand curated environment and continue to invest. So that has been it's been a great opportunity for us to have those incredibly powerful conversations, in addition to really just educating our advertisers by vertical on how this generation, the 13 to 34-year-olds, are reacting to everything that's going on in the world and why it might be different, why this generation is going to be the generation that leads the recovery because they're most likely to burst down the doors. So it's been a really, really powerful month or so for us.
Yeah. And during this month, Evan, you led a summit that was a virtual summit, very much like this. And I watched it, and you had a bunch of news. It was, I'm sure you would have loved to have a big overflowing auditorium full of developers and fans and partners, but instead you did something pretty unique and created, a augmented reality version of a conference. Maybe next year we can combine, some of the technology and wizardry you showed there with Signal. But what was some of the news that you came out with very recently last month?
Oh, I really appreciate you watching. We had so much fun putting that together in this crazy virtual world. We had this giant stage built at the beach. And so it was just so much fun seeing our team really exercise their creativity in the virtual environment and really, I think, build on the AR expertise and technology that we have. And that is the stuff that I think we were most excited to announce. We released a lot of new tools around augmented reality, including new ways to have shared augmented reality experiences with your friends, in your local neighborhoods. We also released new ways for people to bring their machine learning models directly into Snapchat and run them in lenses. And that's already yielded some really cool partnerships. So we had a machine learning model from a company called Wannabuy, and that model was used by Gucci to help people put new Gucci shoes on their feet and actually buy them in the app. And so you're seeing already these emergent e-commerce behaviors where people are trying things on in AR in their homes during this period of time. And so it's been really fun to see the way our partners have worked together to create these new experiences for Snapchatters. Another thing we're really excited about is this product called Minis, which are basically small utilities you can use together with your friends. So apps today are very singular experiences. You download them and you basically use them alone, unless you're using a chat app or social media or something like that. And we thought that these little utility experiences would be more fun if you could bring your friends. So For example, there's a new mini coming out from Atom Tickets that allows you to watch movie trailers with your friends, pick a nearby theater, and actually choose your seats together so you can sit next to each other. And that's the sort of thing that we think is really fun to empower, using our technology and in combination with all of your Snapchat friends. So there were a ton of announcements, but those were some of the highlights. The most fun we had, though, was really putting it all together in virtual reality.
Yeah, I want to just follow up on something that you mentioned because, I've been a longtime student of the technology industry, and it strikes me, that we had an edition of Signal last night in Asia, this morning in Asia, and we saw a lot of technology that feels similar to what you've been discussing. And I think everybody now is aware that essentially WeChat is sort of an operating system into itself, with integration of almost everything that someone might need to do on their mobile phone. And what you just mentioned strikes me as a pretty strong step in the same direction. Is that a fair, a fair thing to say?
Well, I think what WeChat really wisely identified was that communication is perhaps the most frequent behavior that people have on their smartphones. So people talk to their friends and family all day long, and that brings people into WeChat. And WeChat noticed that because people were coming into their service all day long, there was an opportunity to take that frequency of engagement and build other platforms and businesses around it. And we learned a lot from Tencent, even in the early days, when we were still in a little beach house, there were like 8 of us. The folks at Tencent were like, hey, let us help you build a business. We can kind of show you how we've been thinking about this. And we learned that our camera, which is also used for communication, was driving a lot of frequency. People come into our service and they send snaps to each other, all day long. There are 4 billion snaps created every day. And so that real frequency of engagement has allowed us to expand into other business lines, whether that's our content business that you mentioned earlier called Discover, our AR platform, our map where you can see what your friends are up to. So there's a lot of really fun things you can do when people use your products so frequently. And so we've just slowly over time been trying to serve our community with these new products and experiences. And when they're waiting for their friend to reply or something like that, they're willing to check out these new products. And that's really allowed us to expand our business.
Yeah, absolutely. So, Jeremy, do you see unique consumer insights coming off of the Snap platform, particularly in the past 6 months or so?
So I'll kind of just build off of what Evan just said on the communication with the camera. I think that's something that is probably not as well known, but when you think about 4 billion pictures taken every single day and sent in our camera, it is truly the way these generations, Gen Z and young millennials, communicate. And I think that's a really unique insight. It's really the old adage of a picture says 1,000 words, but in this case, what you and I would text to each other and say hello or how are you, they just take a picture of their face and send it to each other. A little fun fact is they actually are taking pictures of like half their face, which is kind of fun. And we really like to work with our advertising partners to give those little nuggets of insight so that they can have relevant advertising. I think one of the other things is some of the behaviors is right now it is so critical to be communicating with your close friends and family because you can't see them. That giving them this platform for authenticity to do that, where they can still see your face, you can be playful in AR. You actually don't have to have anything to say in order to communicate on Snapchat. So like when I talk to my nieces, for instance, I just send them a picture of a puppy dog blends and they love it and they laugh. And we're keeping our relationship actually, frankly, probably stronger than we could, even if they were visiting. So we're seeing a lot of that. And then additionally is people moving really fluidly through the app. So coming in through the camera, communicating with their close friends and family, but then using the map, then using the Discover section, absorbing a lot of content. So not a lot of change, but a lot more like fluidity between, and that close communication is so critical right now to keep families close.
Evan, I want to ask you, because you went through Facebook training its guns on you and somehow they managed to miss. And I'm curious now if you feel that that's also happening with an app that's been much discussed at this conference, which is TikTok. It has a similar user base in terms of age. It is definitely a different use case. I mean, but it strikes me that, it's more entertainment, I guess is a fair way of putting it. But how do you think about TikTok? Is it friend? Is it a collegial? What's your view on TikTok?
Well, we've really admired what ByteDance has done and the products that they've created, and I think TikTok is a great example of this, global talent show where people are all competing with one another to produce really fun videos. And there is some overlap with Discover. We certainly invest a lot in entertaining our community, but I do think TikTok has a fundamentally different use case than Snapchat, and is really about people competing with one another, whereas Snapchat's about helping people develop close friendships. So I think the services are complementary, and it'll be fun to see how both evolve over time. I do think there's a really interesting moment right now because TikTok is prompting a free markets conversation in the United States, because it's the first time that we've seen a massive Chinese conglomerate really enter the US market and be extremely successful with a consumer technology product. And that, I think, is new for the United States. So this will be interesting to see how we work through these challenges. And I think certainly it's an interesting phenomenon. I think a lot of people expected that the next new consumer breakout product would be like a small startup or something like that. And so instead, to see that it's a massive company investing billions and billions of dollars in advertising their product, I think that's a different model than we're used to here in the United States. And so it's certainly raising a lot of questions, and it's going to be a lot of fun to watch how all this plays out.
I appreciate you raising those issues. They're sensitive, obviously, particularly to, global business. But it strikes me we've solved that problem, in the past, and perhaps we can again. A lot of it has to do, with the way that companies handle information and privacy and data. And I think that's at the heart of some of these conversations that are now breaking out in the news. I'm curious, and I'm going a little off script here, but nothing that you haven't answered. How do you think about your users' security and privacy, given that that's very much in the news, not just in the past few weeks, but in the past 24 hours?
This is something that we've really invested in and frankly pioneered from the beginning when we talked about ephemerality. I mean, I remember when we first talked about the idea that we would just delete your data instead of store it forever, that was considered very radical, because the business model at the time was just to save everything forever. And we really felt that we could empower self-expression if people weren't worried about everything we ever said kind of hanging over them. And certainly we've seen this explosion in self-expression because people are able to use our technology just to have conversations, not necessarily ones that are recorded, but ones where people feel open and can really be themselves. So from the beginning, actually that privacy and the way we treat user data has been central to the growth of our business. It's actually been a strategic advantage. And we've been able to innovate time and again, even things like stories that are also ephemeral, the way that we, work with advertisers and protect user data. We've actually invented a lot of things along the way. And because we view this as such a strategic differentiator, we've invested in it a lot. So we don't view this as like a drag on our business. We view this as a driver of our business. And that's, I think, why we've been able to continue to lead the way when it comes to data protection and privacy on Snapchat.
Interesting. Now, one question, and this is, sort of endemic to technology companies more broadly, and also a theme of Signal over the past day and a half, is diversity. And tech companies actually led early, starting to report their diversity numbers. That's the good side. The bad side is that they were dismal, and that it's been hard for these companies at scale to really move the needle. You got into a bit of a press brouhaha last month around the release of your own diversity numbers. Can you talk a little bit about how, as a leader, both of you are working on this issue?
Sure. Well, I think it's really important just to remember that public accountability, in the form of releasing diversity numbers is only one piece of the puzzle. It's really important that we do shine a light on the problems and the lack of representation, for minority groups and women in the technology industry. I think that is really important. But the other piece actually, in our view, is really about driving change. And we think about that, in sort of three different ways. We think a lot about our team. And so our focus on our team is about increasing representation, but also improving retention of minority team members, and making sure that our promotion processes are equitable. I think there's also a really important component here around education, because if we're not open about telling the truth about the legacy of racism and injustice in our country, it's very hard for people to understand the current context and the environment we're operating in. We have hundreds of years of racial injustice here in America that have really gone largely unaddressed. It's only in maybe the last 50 years that we've really made progress towards treating people equally in our country. And so I think there's this general feeling that we have a long way to go to live up to our founding values here in the United States around freedom, equality, and justice for all. So I think education plays a really important role. We also, of course, invest heavily in our DEI program and our strategy. And one of the things we do think is important when it comes to data is actually data that helps our team members make decisions on a team level basis. So public diversity data is generally aggregated at a very high level. So it's kind of company wide. And so it's very hard to use that aggregate data to empower teams to make decisions based on a composition of their own team. And what we really have tried to do is roll out diversity dashboards internally that give people a much more fine-grained view, and for leaders and their different teams, so that they can really work to create change. And so we think that helping build that intrinsic motivation through education, and then providing our team members with tools, empowers them to make decisions as they're growing their business, their teams, and really make the right decisions here. Then the other piece, of course, or the other two pieces, I should say, are the product. So our product and services structured in a way to promote our values, and we think that it's really important, as Jeremi mentioned, to offer a curated content experience where people find it very challenging to spread hateful or racist views. I think that is really important, that as a company more broadly, as we're interacting with 200 million people on our platform every day, that we're providing them with a service that spreads positivity that aligns with our values. And then the third piece is sort of thinking more broadly about how we can drive change in the tech industry as a whole, because one of the things that we're worried about is increasingly, and as companies share their diversity data, they're actually in a short-term competition with one another over a very small pool of diverse talent. And instead of spending those resources competing with one another, they could spend those resources investing in increasing the size of that pool. And so what we'd also like to do is continue to open source our information, the research that we do. And if we can open source that information and encourage people to work together in addition to competing, because I don't think competition is necessarily a bad thing, that can be one way to drive change. But if we can also encourage collaboration, we think that can lead to longer term change as well.
Well, thank you so much. I wish we could keep talking, but we're running just a little bit over. Jeremi and Evan, thank you so much for being part of Signal this year. We look forward to following your story and hearing back from you in the coming years.